There is a certain kind of person who is almost impossible to explain. They walk into a room full of strangers, and within minutes, they are laughing with the elderly man in the corner, asking the shy woman by the window about her life, and somehow making the most guarded person in the room feel completely at ease. No performance, no forced charm, no rehearsed lines. It just happens. You have probably met someone like this at least once, and you probably walked away from that interaction thinking, what is it about that person? Because it was not their looks or their status or even the words they chose. It was something quieter and much harder to name. Something that made you feel, in a way you cannot quite explain, that you were the most interesting person in the world to them. Many people assume this is just charisma, a personality type you are either born with or not. But that is the wrong conclusion. Because psychology tells a very different story. The truth is that the ability to connect with almost anyone is not about being outgoing or entertaining. It is not about having the right words. It is about something far less visible and far more rare. Something that most people, without realizing it, never practice a single day of their lives. Today we are going to decode the psychology of people who can talk to anyone, and what they understand about human connection that most of us quietly miss. First, we need to understand where this ability comes from. Psychologist Howard Gardner, in his theory of multiple intelligences, described a specific kind of intelligence he called interpersonal intelligence. It is the ability to read other people, to sense their moods, motivations, and inner world with an accuracy that goes beyond observation. Some people carry a natural version of this. Their social instincts were simply wired with more sensitivity from the beginning. But science also shows that a significant portion of people who are truly gifted at connection developed that gift the same way any skill is built, through experience, curiosity, and a particular kind of humility that was either taught to them or forced on them by life. What separates these people from everyone else is not confidence. It is orientation. Most people in conversation are subtly pointed inward. Research from Harvard University found that, on average, people spend 60% of conversations talking about themselves. The brain's reward system, specifically the regions linked to motivation and pleasure, activates when we share our own opinions and experiences. In other words, talking about yourself feels good biologically. It is almost a pull you have to consciously resist. People who can talk to anyone have learned to resist it completely. Sign 1. They listen to understand, not to respond. Watch a skilled conversationalist and you will notice something unusual. When you stop speaking, they do not immediately fill the silence. There is a small pause. A half second that most people would rush to fill with their own story. But they use that pause differently. They are processing what you actually said, not preparing their reply. Carl Rogers, one of the most influential psychologists of the last century, called this active listening. He argued that truly hearing another person is not a passive act. It requires suspending your own internal narrative completely. Most of us believe we are listening when we are actually just waiting. Waiting for our turn to speak. Waiting for the part of the conversation that is relevant to us. People who connect easily have learned to stop waiting. They ask the follow-up question instead. Not the polite follow-up, the real one. The one that tells you they were actually inside what you said, not standing on the outside of it. That single behavior, studies show, makes the other person feel genuinely seen. And feeling genuinely seen is one of the rarest experiences a human being can have. Sign 2. They find you interesting before you give them a reason to. This is the part that is hardest to imitate. because it is not a technique. It is a genuine internal state. Most people approach a new conversation with a quiet, unconscious question running in the background. Is this person worth my energy? They are waiting to be interested. But people with high social intelligence approach it from the opposite direction. The curiosity comes first. Before you have said anything remarkable, they are already leaning forward, already engaged. Because they start from the assumption that every person carries a world inside them that has never been fully shared. Neuroscience connects this to how the brain processes novelty. When genuine curiosity is activated, the brain releases dopamine. It enters a state of openness and reward-seeking. That internal shift is not invisible. The other person can feel it. Not in any dramatic way, but in the warmth of a question, in the quality of eye contact, in the sense that the space between you has somehow expanded. You feel safe to be more of yourself. And that is exactly what they were hoping for. Sign 3. They make the conversation about the other person without being fake about it. There is a study worth knowing. When researchers had people rate their most enjoyable conversations, the ones rated highest were almost always the ones where they did most of the talking. The conversations where they were asked good questions, where they felt heard, where they discovered things about themselves through the act of being listened to. The people who can talk to anyone understand this intuitively. They know that the secret to a great conversation is not being interesting. It is being interested. But what separates this from flattery or performance is sincerity. They are not manufacturing attention. They are genuinely curious about the answer. There is a psychological concept called ego suspension. It is the ability to set aside your own need to be seen and validated, at least temporarily, in service of truly receiving another person. For most of us, that is an enormous and uncomfortable thing to do. We are so accustomed to steering conversations back toward our own experience that doing the opposite feels like standing still while everything moves around you. For them, it feels natural, because they have found something better than being the most interesting person in the room. They have found the deeper satisfaction of bringing out something interesting in someone else. Sign 4. They make you feel safe before they make you feel entertained. Think about the last conversation that truly stayed with you. Chances are it did not begin with anything clever. It began with something small and warm, a relaxed smile, an open question with no pressure behind it, a body language that said, without words, you do not have to perform here. Psychologists call this creating psychological safety, and it happens in the very first moments of an interaction. The nervous system is always scanning. Before your conscious mind has even registered a thought, your body has already decided whether this person is a threat or a shelter. People who connect easily send shelter signals, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent details. They do not check their phone. They do not look past you at who else is in the room. They respond to what you said instead of pivoting to themselves. Those tiny choices accumulate into a feeling that says, I am safe here. And once that feeling exists, people open like windows. Sign 5. They carry no script. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive thing about them. You might assume that someone who is socially skilled has rehearsed lines, smooth transitions, a toolkit of techniques. But the opposite is true. They are radically present. Because they are not managing a performance, they never seem like they are performing. They are simply responding to what is actually in front of them, in real time. This is connected to something neuroscience has begun to explore closely. When a person is genuinely present in a conversation, something called interpersonal synchrony begins to happen. Heart rates subtly align. Breathing patterns mirror each other. Brains begin to process information on a similar rhythm. This is not a metaphor. It is a measurable biological event that occurs when two people are truly tuned to each other. And the person who initiates that synchrony is always the one who arrived without an agenda. They came simply to connect. And the human nervous system recognizes that every time. So what does this mean for the rest of us? These qualities are not a closed door. They are not personality traits hardwired at birth and locked away. They are orientations, habits of attention, ways of showing up that can be slowly, quietly practiced. 3 shifts tend to make the most difference. First, try being curious before being impressive. Walk into a conversation less focused on what you will say and more genuinely interested in what the other person carries inside them. The best stories you will ever hear are sitting in the people you have not asked the right question yet. Second, resist the pull to relate everything back to yourself. When someone tells you something, your brain will immediately find its own matching story. That is natural. But before you tell it, ask one more question. Go one layer deeper into their world. That choice changes everything about how the conversation feels to them. Third, arrive without a destination. Not every conversation needs to go somewhere impressive. Not every silence needs to be filled. Sometimes the most connected you will ever feel in a conversation is in the pause after something true has been said, when neither of you rushes to break it. People who can talk to anyone are not doing something magical. They are simply doing something most of us forgot somewhere along the way. They are paying full attention. They are staying genuinely curious. And they are willing, even for just a few minutes, to make someone else's world more important than their own. That is not a superpower. It is a choice. And the beautiful thing about a choice is that it is available to you in every single conversation you will ever have, starting with the very next one. If this spoke to something in you, leave a comment about which of these signs you want to practice first. You might be closer to this kind of connection than you think. If this helped you, press like and share it with someone who could use a reminder that real connection is not about being charming. It is about being present. I'm Apex. Subscribe so you never miss an upcoming video. Goodbye and see you next time.